Yeah. I've got quite a list. I've made a few notes. Starting with the target to win, I got elected as deputy leader partly on the idea that I would spread the target to win message, which I have been doing. And there are some people, but very, very few, who actually believe that is the only way forward. I do a lot of other campaigning. I've spoken at a number of people's assembly meetings, and certainly target to win is not going to get us elected on its own. It's not going to get us into power on its own. It's not going to save the planet and save the world on its own. We do need campaigning. It's vital. So anyone who thinks just because I sort of headed the target to win campaign in a number of ways doesn't mean I believe it's the only thing. The growth agenda, I was actually chairing the political committee a few months ago when it was brought up and pointed out to all of our major spokespeople that they must not talk about growth. They must not talk about economic growth. And when I spotted in the agenda the phrase that this will benefit and support sustainable economic growth in one of the motions, I pointed this out in the proposal of the motion. Oh God, we can't have that in! So, even though it's in there, the proposal of the motion was absolutely horrified. We do recognise we must not be talking about growth. And that actually brings me on to one of the last points, why I missed a bit out. One of the things unique about the Green Party amongst socialist groups is that we don't talk about growth. We do recognise that growth is not possible. We also, unlike some socialist groups, recognise that eco-socialism is important, that the ecology is something we need to work on. And a great difference between us and the old Marxist parties is subsidiarity. We don't believe that we can control meat and production from the centre. We believe it should be done from the ground upwards, so that those things make us unique. And yet we do work on them. We do try and push them. And working with other socialist groups, I was actually on the front page of the paper this week in our local daily paper, and I got a few emails very quickly saying, was that a picture of you on the front page holding a socialist workers banner? And I said, yes it was, but read what's on the banner. That's what I'm standing up for. And they're fighting for the same thing. They're fighting against cuts. So are we. In fact, I have to leave conference early on Monday because I am meeting outside the town hall because all of the councillors will be getting together at 6 o'clock. So we're meeting to protest outside the town hall with Socialist Worker, with Left Unity, with some members of the Labour Party to protest against the cuts before the councillors go in and all but one of them vote in favour of the cuts budget. And I will be the one who won't vote for the cuts budget. Yes, we are working with them. We've got to.
So many really important things to touch on. It's difficult, but yeah, the growth thing is really interesting, in that I'm not a socialist because I don't believe in growth. My thoughts on this is that I don't know why anyone talks about growth, because what's the point of economic growth? What does it do? So some people think that if you have economic growth, perhaps that means that there'll be more jobs. So if it's jobs that we're interested in, why aren't we talking about jobs? Why are we talking about growth as a proxy? Or maybe it's because they think it's going to end poverty. So again, if it's poverty that we're interested in, let's talk about poverty rates, not about growth, and then assume that that's resolved the poverty question. So we're certainly not a party that's aimed at growth. I don't think we're particularly aimed at non-growth either, reducing as the actual object. What we're aimed at doing is creating, is achieving the social and environmental goals that we want to achieve. If that means the economy grows a bit or doesn't grow a bit, it's sort of neither here nor there, because if you've got everybody, if everybody that wants to work is in work, everybody's got all their needs covered, the environment isn't being destroyed, it's kind of doesn't really matter whether it's growth. The focus on growth is to do with the way our finance system operates, I think, and to do with the money system, and I think we're locked into having to have growth, because otherwise the whole system kind of falls over. It's a kind of house of cards system that falls over without growth. So it's a sort of, it's a bit of a red herring, if you like, but a very powerful one that we have to be confident about saying, well, let's just not talk about that. You know, it's not the interesting question. Gosh, other things. They're not just having an electoral strategy and a campaign thing. I don't really see these as two separate things in isolation. I think every time we go out with our Green Party placards that have slogans, that have campaign slogans on, and say the Green Party, we're doing both, aren't we? We're showing people what we stand for, and what we mean, and we're supporting the actual campaigns on the issues at the same time. So I don't think one is the other. The way I see it, I suppose, is that I see the Green Party as this is our attempt as the people, if you like, to take back the government. And so, we're both at the same time we're saying, we're taking back the government by making demands upon it and say, you must do this, we're going to force you to do this with the power of our, with this people power of this campaign. We're also saying, and if you don't, we're going to replace you with ourselves. So, it's a sort of double-edged threat, if you like. And of course we have to do both. You couldn't possibly have anything to say on the doorstep if you weren't actually doing anything for real in the real world about real issues. The other one is about means and ends, and about the top-down sort of institutions that we've got. Whose question was that? Yeah. No, of course you can't divorce means and ends. This is one of the reasons why I would say I'm not sort of in favour of kind of violent revolution, because I think if you start off violent, when do you stop being violent? When is it ever convenient to stop being violent? It's never, it's always useful to just force people to do what you want, and so you can't even start like that. In terms of the big institutions, I think our policies already address a lot of the problems with them, and if they don't, we can improve those policies until they do, and that's sort of how we go about it. This also touched on what makes us distinctive. I haven't been involved in other left-wing parties, but I've got a friend who spent a long time in the SWP and has told me a lot about it. And the way that they do things there is, when you're a new member, a lot of their meetings are kind of educating you as to what the correct views are. And so everyone kind of learns, this is how it's going to be. I think we're the kind of complete flip side, and ever since I've been coming to conference, I've been completely, enamoured with the Green Party, because we're not told where it's going. We tell ourselves, if you like, we tell our policy website page how it's going to be. And I think we've got very entrenched participatory democracy and good democratic procedures, and that's not just like a technical thing, that's so fundamental to what makes us distinctive. And sometimes I've heard people say, the Green Party isn't really a left-wing party because it hasn't kind of, where's its connection to ordinary working people? My answer to that is always, like, it's absolutely through and through. It's not even mediated by having to, you join a union and elect somebody to the union who then represents you when, in policy decisions in the Labour Party, for instance. We just do it directly. We are ordinary working people, and we make our own decisions ourselves. That's our connection. There is no. So I think that's what makes us distinct. Other ones, the micro-collectivism thing. Yes, absolutely. I think it's really important that we come together and form collectives, and especially if you're going to be doing something anyway. If you're going to set up a business as window cleaners, set up a business as a window cleaners cooperative and make sure everybody knows that that's what you are. I think that's a really important thing to do. You can't do everything through micro collectives, but if that's where your energy is, that's what you should put your energy into, and then do bits of other things as well. If your energy is more on getting people elected, great. If your energy is more on campaigns, great. I think all of these things need doing. We shouldn't spend too much time fighting about which is the most important thing, because they're all important. So you kind of just got to follow your nose, do the thing that you feel you can most contribute to, and it all kind of comes together. That's pretty enough.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you, for your comebacks there. We probably can get another 6 in if you're very disciplined. Which side was our last time? Did we go from? Mixed up.
Come on. Just make an arbitrary decision.
Thanks very much, Aaron Starkey, Authority, and Redbridge and also MEP candidate for London Region. I mean, for me, the issue that you was the issue that you raised, I think, is really part of the problem, because to a certain extent, our policies have also been policies that have been adopted by so-called socialist parties. So if you take the issue of climate chaos up there, climate change, we've gone along with carbon trading scheme. You know, we endorsed that kind of thing. That came not from us; it came from consensus. We endorsed things like biofuels. We went along with the mainstream around so-called socialist parties backing that as well. We went along with carbon taxes, which even came in earlier. We're also signed up to sort of believe in carbon trading and storage, you know, which is an unproven technology, but nevertheless is being factored in as to ways in which we can sort of reduce CO2 emissions. So one of the problems we've got is that I'm really pleased to hear all say that there was a directive to say do not talk about growth. But this brings us to the point that we're
Directive, we don't do directive. Discussion and agreement.
Okay, fine. Okay, but I'm just
Mind your language.
Okay, sorry, but I'm just saying that ostensibly the problem is that the very tension that a lot of people have spoken to about campaigning or electioneering comes really prominent there, because we start talking about jobs. We start talking about green jobs. Green jobs have to come from growth. It's impossible to say that we will create new jobs and then not be able to factor in that will require some form of economic activity.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to make.
Growth.
The thing for me that's missing off that, off there, is the Green Socialist, climate chaos, austerity, and democracy. Because for me, that's the missing piece. We are an anti-party party, and that's our strength in the current situation, I think. And sadly, I don't think we exploit that nearly enough as our strength. And my last point is simply about the thing about collective actions. I mean, if we look at where change is coming or where change is happening, you're finding it at the local level. And it's people who, I mean, I've just done some work on urban social movements in my work. And these people are doing really incredible things, but they're not politically interested in political parties. In fact, they are totally disinterested in political parties as a solution. One of the nice debates in this conference will be about the fringe on real democracy, or motion on real democracy, because ultimately we have an electoral system that no longer delivers the voice of the people. And if we carry on simply pushing along those lines, not only will we never arrive there, but we're actually condoning a system that's fundamentally corrupted through political corruption, through corporate takeover of our political institutions. And we should be an anti-democratic party, fundamentally, or not anti-democratic, we should be a different democratic party and really pushing for a different form of democracy. And that begs the question, how can you keep on going then for election gain inside and argue the other? Because it makes it a bit look like UKIP, who are arguing against you who want to get elected then.
Interested in the talk about sustainability and jobs. Well, I think this party, the problem with the party is I mean, I very much like the Green Party, that I've been in several others. I think the Green Party is a great party, but we have great difficulty, I think, in recruiting working class members. And one of the reasons is clearly we're not connecting up enough with the trade union movement. And I think very glad to hear that Remain is now the trade union liaison officer, which is a really good thing. We really need to develop this. And we need to think, well, one of the reasons clearly as an active trade unionist most of my life is that people out in the trade union movement are not attracted to the Green Party is because of the problem of jobs. It's seen, you know, very unfairly, I think, as a party which is anti-growth and therefore anti-jobs. And I know this is very close experience with very strong contacts in the aircraft, in the civil aviation industry. So we have to show to trade unionists as part of our recruiting for working class people that we can provide jobs. And this is part of the move towards socialism, because we will not develop a socialist society in this country unless we are part of a much wider movement than what we have at the moment. People who talk about, in this party, I'm afraid, don't have relations with the trade unions because they're connected with the Labour Party, or they're just interested in jobs which are not sustainable. I think that's a really wrong policy. In fact, as we just today and yesterday, we were out standing outside the council offices in Brighton with a lot of people, with trade unions who opposed the Labour Party position. So we have to work on that. The Labour Party is increasingly going against the interests of workers, and so I think we have to build on that. Okay.
Well, none to myself from Norwich. I'm an eco-socialist. As such, I believe that green politics and socialism are inseparable from each other. But if we're going to achieve our ends, whether by electoral means or some other means, we're going to have to reach out to a whole bunch of people who are less politically aware and less literate than us. Now, we need to recognise that for the last 3.5 decades, the neoliberals have controlled the political discourse, and that the language of the left is now a pejorative language. I want us all in this room to ask ourselves to what extent we should use the word socialism when our arguments speak so well for themselves.